The Takrut Yant Pichai Songkram Bang Rajan is a truly sacred and ancient Siamese Wicha. This Takrut uses the great and historically renowned Yant Duang Pichai Songkram sacred Yantra, which is an astrological shield which was used for winning wars and battles in ancient times, especially during the wars of the Ayutthaya dynasty. This Takrut, as can be seen, has a brazen alchemical metal frame, which when you look at it you can distinguish the classic carabao horned buffalo imagery, which is smelted and formed into this frame around the Takrut scroll spell. This carabao buffalo horned frame is the outer housing for the Yant Pichai Songkram spell inscription, which is on a sacred alchemical metal yantra foil, which is rolled up and inserted within. The Yant Duang Pichai Songkram itself is composed of a sacred and very complex geometrical design in the form of a chakra, which means a wheel shape, and this is created using an extremely difficult to compose and complex series of astrological information with numerology and with sacred lek akara and lek yantra designs and ancient calm spells. They are used applying these corresponding powers of the astrological influential aspects of the yantra, and are focused upon deviating any inauspicious energies or influential factors within the astrological facets of a situation, and to increment and improve the auspicious influential factors in order to achieve victory in any situation. This was most often used, of course, in war mongering, although these kind of yantra can also be used for personal use and be directed towards one's personal astrological readings. In general, in ancient times, only high-ranking officials, lords and generals and important members of the royal court and of course the royal family would be seen or be allowed to possess and wear the Duang Pichai Songkram amulets, or to possess this yantra, and there was very little possibility that common folk would be able to obtain or own one of these extremely sacred and powerful magic spells. This was because mostly only the master astrologers of the royal court had the information and the secret Wicha and the ability to compose such a complex yantra by working together in many numbers, and very few individual common folk masters would possess this Wicha of creating the Duang Pichai Songkram sacred geometry successfully. In fact, it takes so long to make the Duang Pichai Songkram yantra spell that even the master astrologers in the royal courts would take as long as 7 whole days and nights working together on the Duang Pichai Songkram, considering, contemplating and discussing all of the myriads of possible influencing factors and things which might be influential in the creation of this sacred yantra, which indeed changed depending on the date and time of when the yantra should be implemented before battle. And then they would finally be able to correctly align the geometry of the design after taking all factors into consideration. It is considered right up to the present day to have been an extremely rare thing to see anybody in possession of the Yant Duang Pichai Songkram yantra right up to these present days. The word Duang Pichai Songkram in truth means the astrological yantra which wins all wars. Until the events in the story of the wars of Ayutthaya happened, the Duang Pichai Songkram was considered a sacred yantra which was reserved exclusively for kings and royal persons, and only those who knew of the Duang Pichai Songkram yantra were, apart from the kings, the lords, the princes and courtiers of the royal palace and the royal family themselves, and the common people were completely unaware of the existence of this extremely ancient and sacred spell, which came from an ancient grimoire which had been kept and found and reserved for those of the royal courts and high officials. The yant itself looks very much like any other yant which is seen in Thai Sayasat occult sciences, but in truth the reason they look like this is because the master astrologers were also masters of 3 different Wicha or occult sciences simultaneously, and they also played a large part in the creation of the method for the Duang Pichai Songkram yantra, and so they used the methods from the yant which they had already mastered in Thai Sayasat, and this is indeed why the Yant Duang Pichai Songkram looks so similar. They used the 3 following Wicha: Puttasat, which means Buddha sciences, the Wicha of the sacred Buddha Dhamma, and they also applied Sayasat to the Duang Pichai Songkram, which means the occult sciences of sorcery. And lastly, they applied the most important element which makes the Duang Pichai Songkram different, namely Horasat, which means astrology, astrological sciences, which came from the ancient Brahman Vedic books of wisdom. Combining these 3 Wicha together to create the design of the Yant Duang Pichai Songkram, these master astrologers and wizards then conjured up a prakatha incantation using Namputtamon, which is sacred holy water, empowered with the mantras of 108 monks chanting in jhanic meditation, in order to empower and activate the Yant Duang Pichai Songkram with Buddha magic and sacred blessings from the purity of the Buddhist monks. The actual Yant Duang round astrological chakra wheel must be inscribed in the top half of the yant between 2 Buddha images and below 1 further Buddha image. The bottom half of the yantra should have a 5-tiered dais or bench which gets wider towards the bottom with a chatra parasol on each side. On the lower left of the bench, to the side of it and below the left-hand chatra parasol, stands the deva Intapad, and on the right is the deva Rajan, also below his parasol on the right-hand side. These 2 devas are believed since the times of ancient people to have immense importance, because they are allowed to reside below the Saweta Chat. The Saweta Chat is the parasol. The frame of the Yant Pichai Songkram should have the sacred incantation of the Prakata Pajao 16 Tit, closing the circumference in every direction, which is the incantation of the 16 Buddhas in 16 directions. There are just too many complex kata and incantations to explain and give a synopsis of them all, but to explain perhaps the most important of the remaining kata included and incorporated within this sacred geometry spell, one should include the Prakata Itipiso, which is written using the Dharma or Magruk method, which is the way that the knight on a chessboard moves. So each syllable of the kata is written in a diagonal method, putting the syllables of the kata into a formula which would be unreadable except to those who know this method of composition. And also the kata of the 4 elements of the Huajai Tatsi, which is the heart mantra to invoke and turn the 4 elements within the yantra being, namely Namapata. The corners of the Yant Duang Pichai Songkram has 16 chongwo, meaning hollow channels, which have the Prakata Pajao 16 Tit of 10 directional Buddhas of protection closing them, which then is also closed using the turning of the 4 elements, namely Namana'a, Nogonoga, Goono'a, Na'aga'ang. And the Prakata Itipiso 8 Tit is inscribed around the Duang Pichai Songkram, which has other various spells to protect from all dangers in all 8 directions, and is the Huajai Pra Itipiso Hong Ton, and goes like this: Itipiso Bhagava Arahang Samma Samputo Wicha Jarana Sampano Sukato Lokavitu Anuttaro Burisathamma Sarati Sattha Tewa Manutsanang Puto Bhagavati. The completion of this victorious winner of wars magic spell is embellished by filling the remaining spaces of the yantra with other katas, such as the kata Nawahora Kun, Sang Wisolo Busapupa, and the Huajai Praapitam, the heart mantra of the Abhidhamma Sangvita Bukayapa, and the Patam Jetkampi, Puttaraksa, protection of the Buddha, Dhammaraksa, protection of the Dhamma, the Sankaraksa, protection of the Sangha, Pidaraksa, protection of the Father, Intaraksa, protection of the Indras, Brahmaraksa, protection of the Brahmas, Tevaraksa, protection of the Devas, and Mataraksa, protection of the Mother. It is hence so easy to see that the Takrut Yant Duang Pichai Songkram Bang Rajan contains a very powerful and complex piece of sacred geometry within its magic spell, which has required such a lot of time and contemplation to compose, and is clearly designed to protect you from all dangers and to maintain the astrological influences in your life in auspicious balance. This Yant Duang Pichai Songkram spell in Takrut form is then incremented by you, the devotee, when you chant the Prakata Duang Pichai Songkram, which I shall now chant for you to indicate the method. Namo me sappatevanang sappakaraha jatevanang suryanja ปะมุญจะทะสสิภุมโมจะเทวานังวุฒโธลาพังภวิสติชีโวสุกโรจะมหาลาพังโสโรราหุเกตุจะมหาลาพังสัพพพยังวินาศสันติสัพพทุกขังวินาศสันติสัพพโรคังวินาศสันติลักขณาอหังวันทามิสัพพทาสัพพเทวานังปาลยันตุสัพพทาเอเตนะมังคลเตเชนะสัพพโสธีภวันตุเม